Welcome, 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 welcome to Jesse and Beyond. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to ask everybody to please mute. Please mute. When you join, please mute. Thank you. Appreciate your kindness.
That nothing else was going wrong.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. When you join, please mute. Please mute. Thank you for joining. Please mute. Appreciate you. Thank you for taking out the time to this evening to join the Just Beyond Forum. We will be starting at 5:03. We will be starting at 5:03 with an announcement. Then we will go into 5:05, introducing Just Beyond. Then after 5:07, the introduction of the panelists by Michonne. Then the moderator would take over. So you do have like 2 more minutes. So you want to go get some water or a Coke, have a Coke and a smile.
Good idea.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, 1 more minute. I'm gonna make a short announcement. And after the announcement, I will go into introducing Just Beyond. Thank everybody for joining. Appreciate your kindness and your time. Everybody's time is very precious. Okay, it is 5:03. So my name is Valerie Jefferson. I am one of the Just Beyond Pillars, and I is one of the announcers. So my announcement is this is a very safe place. My announcement is everyone, please respect everyone because everybody is important. So, and also, if you have a question, please put your question in the chat. I'm one of the chat officers, as well as our administrator and Michonne as well, and also our other pillars. So please put your question in the chat, and just in case we don't have enough time for you to ask your question at the end of the forum, because we have some very powerful hitters today. So with that said and done, and also if we get Zoom bombed, that means if someone come on here being very unpolite, we will cut it off and immediately log back in. We call that Zoom bombing. So we don't like Zoom bombing. So that said and done, I'm going to go into introducing Jesse and Beyond. Jesse and Beyond is a coalition of organization and individual joining together under one umbrella, Jesse and Beyond Coalition, Louisiana. We come together to fight and stand and show up for the justice for Black African American people, specifically in New Orleans, but we do reach out across the state of Louisiana. We meet every Tuesday. You are welcome to join the pillars. We meet every Tuesday. There's add your contact information in the chat, and our administrator, Ms. Brooke, will contact you, or we will add you onto the email list, and we speak up and we have meetings to see what we will be having a forum on. This year we are trying something new. We're having a in-person forum, then we have a Zoom forum. So we switch back and forth so we can also stay connected with the community. So I gave you a little bit something about the Just Beyond. If you want to know more information, you can easily go on our Facebook page, or you can email us at Just Beyond Coalition. Put your email in the email chat, and we will get back with you. So now we're going to start off with a prayer. Everyone, please center yourself. Gracious Father in heaven, we come to you as your humble servants, coming together, learning how to be a better, productive citizens of New Orleans, of Louisiana, of the great United States. We asking that you bless us with your very presence. We asking that you speak through the panelists, Lord. We asking that you speak to the moderator, Miss Cece, Lord. Bless them, Lord God Jesus, that they would give us sound document information that we can use in our daily lives. We ask that you bless us with your presence, that everyone respect one another. And we use this information that we can stand up, show up, and speak up for justice, because you are justice. We ask for all the blessing in my Savior Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So we are going to turn you over to a pillar. Her name is Michonne. She will introduce the panelists and the moderator. Michonne, it's on you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michonne Copeland, and I'm a pillar, as Valerie just told you. And welcome to Justice and Beyond Forum tonight. You all can hear me?
Okay.
Y'all can hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
welcome
to Justice and Beyond Forum. The theme for tonight is New Orleans is under attack, and how do we fight back? Tonight, moderating will be CC Campbell-Rock, who is a journalist. We also have Judge Arthur Hunter, Dr. Andrea Boyles, Professor and Attorney William Snowden, Jack Sweeney, who is a DSA member, Randal Gaines, who's the chair of the Democratic Party of Louisiana. And I'm not sure if he's joined us yet. He's on the road, but he said he will get on, Judge John T. Fuller. Welcome to Justice and Beyond. And I hope you get all the information tonight. Judge Hunter, you on? Fuller, you on? Okay, I'll turn it over to you, CC.
Okay, this is very interesting. I'm so glad that Justice and Beyond is taking up this topic, because this is not just a topic, New Orleans under attack, how do we fight back? This is not just a topic to talk about. It's time for action. And I'm hoping through this panel discussion, we can find ways to strategize for action. The topics tonight are voting, the difference between DSA and Democratic Party, and judge seats in New Orleans. And I want to start with the judge seats in New Orleans. And I want to talk to Judge Hunter about it, and everybody else can weigh in. But I think what has happened to the judiciary, the takeover of our judiciary, is not only, it is dangerous. It is taking away representation. And let me just say, I think it's racist. So maybe everybody doesn't feel that way, but I do. This is what it's given me. Given the fact that our school system was taken over, and now the state wants to take over our judiciary and tell our judiciary how to, do their cases. So Judge Hunter.
Thank you, CC. And thanks to Justice and Beyond for inviting me to the panel. Let's talk about the practical effects, what's going to happen when you lose three judges from Tulane and Broad. Number one, those cases will be allotted to the remaining 9 judges. And those judges, as of right now, will get between 50 to 100 cases because of those 3 judges who will no longer be there. Not to mention the cases that those 9 judges will continue to receive as well. Right now it takes a year and a half, maybe 2 years for a murder case to go to trial. Now it's going to take longer. You have people who will stay in the Orleans Justice Center longer, which means it's going to cost us all as taxpayers to keep them there longer. It means that you can lose witnesses. It means that you can lose physical evidence. It means that people will not feel they are receiving justice at Tulane and Broad, then you know what? They may take it upon themselves to have justice in the streets. You know, and look, if you want to send a message of a quick punishment, it's going to take longer for that to happen. You know, so that's what that's going to be the practical effects at Tulane and Broad. Everything would take longer. Victims, and again, you know, when you have a victim who's a domestic abuse survivor, that will be a problem. When you have family members and witnesses who to a homicide, and it's already hard enough for homicide detectives to get people to testify, now it's going to take even longer for that to happen. So it's going to cost money. Victims will not have the justice or the swift justice that they deserve. Defendants, people in jail will stay in jail longer. And that's the problem, and that's going to be the chaotic system we will have at Tulane and Broad.
And the other question I want to ask, Judge, I read the legislation that led to the bill for the judicial takeover, and it was all about, oh, we want to streamline things, we want to save money, we want to be more efficient. But from your perspective, what is it really about?
You know, it's hard to try to rationale why they want to reduce criminal district court judges in Orleans Parish. Now, you know, everybody now is talking about the reduction in crime. That's a good thing. But, you know, one thing about statistics, they go up and they go down. And we don't know what's going to happen in the next few months or in the next 6 months or within the next year, in which you would need more judges. Look, when I became a judge in 1996, they created 2 positions, K and L, because of the backlog of cases that they had at Tulane and Broad. You had 2 retired judges who were hearing cases. I suspect within the next 6 months to a year, when the outcry, you hear the outcry about cases taking longer, they're going to bring back 2 or 3 more judges or people who will be in a position to accept those positions to handle the overload of cases.
Well, I had heard that it was said that, oh, we want New Orleans to be like all the other parishes because no other parish have all of those criminal court judges or the civil court judges. We want to be like everybody else. Why should they be different? So why should we be different?
Well, look, crime in New Orleans is different than crime in Baton Rouge or Shreveport or Mamou. We have cases in which you have multiple defendants, multiple people accused of crimes. All those people need lawyers. We have done, criminal district court has done more jury trials than any other court in the state. You know, so you want to make us like everyone else, then don't reduce the judges. I don't see where people are being reduced in Baton Rouge or Shreveport or other places if they're talking about efficiency. And if you're going to talk about efficiency, let's talk about not just Orleans Parish, but let's talk about efficiency in those other court districts throughout the state as well. Why single New Orleans out?
That's a good question. And aren't they cutting back on the Fourth Circuit judges? Didn't they say something about taking a couple of those seats?
They took away 2 Fourth Circuit Court judgeships. They took away 2 municipal court judgeships as well. They will also take away at least 2 juvenile court seats as well.
Okay, so that's bad in and of itself. So I just want to flip it back, and then we're going to go over to the voting. And I see that Judge Johnson joined us, so I'm going to hope you have something to say about this too, Judge Johnson, Calvin Johnson. I hope you have something to say about this, because the fact that we're getting into the voting now. Well, before that, can Chelsea Napoleon handle all of the clerk work now that we don't have a clerk of criminal district court?
Well, I believe we're going to find out, we're finding out right now whether or not it can be done. It's just a matter of time to see if it can, in fact, be done.
And then I see where Liz Morrell put together a letter to the city councils threatening them, listen, if you put Calvin Johnson as the interim judge, then you could lose your jobs. And then the Louisiana State Supreme Court say, no, that's not what we're doing here. So I feel that I'm feeling hostility coming from the Attorney General and as well as the governor's office, even though he's downplaying everything, and the legislature. I just, okay,
Miss
well, let's
Stacey,
move on. Go ahead.
can I chime in real quick about
Please.
well, I guess it's just now Orleans Parish Clerk of Court, Miss Napoleon. The question has never been about her capabilities to perform the job. I think she ran civil clerk of court just fine. The question is, was this a democratic process with which New Orleanians had an opportunity to use their people power to elect who they want to be the Orleans Parish Clerk of Court, right? And I think that's a very important distinction because sometimes it's natural and easy for us to fall into this pitting against each other, right? Calvin Duncan versus Chelsea Napoleon. The conversation was what the legislature did in eliminating Mr. Duncan's seat after he was elected, right? Was that constitutional? If the Louisiana Supreme Court is saying it's constitutional, that's one conclusion. But I think everybody can believe that it was undemocratic, right? He won with more than, I think, 67% of New Orleanians, electing him to that position. And they didn't like him being in that position, so they took away that people power. And that's what I want to make sure people are reminded of, that when people in New Orleans utilized their power to elect who they wanted to be their criminal clerk of court, they took away that power by essentially nullifying and eliminating that position.
Yeah, and let me agree with Will too. Look, I believe Chelsea Napoleon is an attorney. She's run the Civil District Court Clerk's office for a number of years. Again, it's not about pinning Calvin versus Chelsea. It's about the process and how it happened. And so we have got to, everybody says, how do we fix that? The litigation is still going on in federal court. Let's see what the federal judge has to say.
This is Calvin Johnson, if I can.
Okay, Judge, please weigh in.
Chelsea Napoleon is absolutely fantastic. I say that because she was appointed, but she was put in a situation right before we had an election. And the thing that the criminal clerk of court does, and is the only one who does, is that person. She filled that role. She handled the election in a way that there was no bad thing that happened. That was another thing the people in Baton Rouge was looking closely at, was whether in fact she or we could get that election thing done, and we did. Judge Lombard is actually still physically at Tulane and Broad doing that clerk job that he has been doing on and off, I suppose, for over 30 years. So the two of them, no question in my mind, can get the job done. However, Will and Arthur are both correct. Correct in that New Orleanians was not allowed to vote. That's the issue, and that is why I decided to become the interim clerk, was to give New Orleanians the opportunity to vote, because that's what we're here to talk about right now, because that's the most important thing we have, is voting.
Yeah, can I add to that, please?
Hello? Go ahead, Mr. Gaines.
Oh, yeah. So look, and I appreciate the opinions of our respected and distinguished judges. They are absolutely correct. They gave the practical application of it, but I'm going to give you the real application from a different perspective. I do look. There were no empirical studies that were done to justify reducing the number of judges in New Orleans. Okay. Matter of fact, Senator Morris, even during his testimony, could not give an order, remotely give justifications for it. This is really, if it's, I think it was a racist agenda. I can say that. And if given the benefit of doubt that I don't think exists, as a minimum, it's a disregard for the interests of African American voters in New Orleans, and it's consistent with the Trump's agenda to discredit cities with democratic leadership and large African American populations. I mean, it's hard to say that this has some legitimate purpose other than that. So I do think that when you move to voting, I'll talk more about why that's so important. But that's the agenda that we're facing, and that's the challenges that we're going to have to deal with in the next coming months and next coming years. But thank you so much.
Thank you. And let me just say, with all due respect, the question about Chelsea Napoleon was not that she's unqualified, but the volume of work that's going to be there that she's going to have to deal with if she's going to be the sole clerk. That's what I was concerned about. So let's get to I see somebody's got their hand up. Who's that?
That may be me, Lane Tripp.
Hey, Lane.
Hey.
Go.
Yeah.
Oh dear, is that okay?
Bell, you on 2 times because you echoing.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring up the fact that just a few days ago, maybe 2 days, yesterday or the day before, I understand that Governor Landry has now may call a special session just for the purpose of the legislature addressing more issues with Orleans Parish criminal courts. Am I right? Did I hallucinate that? Will, have you heard anything about that?
He mentioned the possibility, particularly in response to the indictment of Attorney General Murrell.
Right.
That I think that was the main impetus of his consideration of calling a special session, was to address the indictment of the Attorney General.
Well, my concern, and the reason I wanted to bring it up to people, is to keep an eye out for this, because I have a feeling that there's a lot more going on than just that. I have a feeling that there could easily, it's kind of like the problem when somebody tries to call a constitutional convention to address one particular issue, but when you do that, you open the doors to all kinds of changes. And so I just wanted to bring that up.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Just be mindful that all questions will come at the end so we can get through all panelists. Thank you.
So then I just wanted to have Dr. Boyles to weigh in, because what's happening to New Orleans and how we're supposed to deal with that. It's really, to me, it's not only associates, it's a psychological issue. Can you speak to that, Dr. Boyles?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? All right. So for starters, let me say this. I want to first say thank you so much to Justice and Beyond for having me on, and all collaborators and those who are attending this evening for this very important conversation. I'd also like to say that, just kind of as I guess as an intro, I am a critical sociologist and criminologist. And so I am very intentional about challenging us to think about some things structurally and otherwise. And all of my work is rooted in socio-historical context. And so that's the angle in which I plan to have a conversation about voting rights or any other subject matter related to it. And so with that being said, I think that for starters, also, let me add this. Also, I am serving, just to be clear, I'm serving in my personal capacity and separate of all institutional and organizational affiliations this evening. And so on that note, I like to say that voting is very important for all the reasons that you all have opened up discussions with, concerning judge seats and so forth in New Orleans. But I want to also extend that conversation. I don't want to stop at the idea that voting is just simply important. Voting in and of itself is one of many tools. It's one of many tools. I would like to have that conversation, because I think that it will be intellectually disingenuous for me as a sociologist and criminologist to have a conversation as a person who spends an incredible amount of time in civil unrest to begin and end social change with simply voting. It is one tool and an important tool in democracy, but there are a litany of steps that need to be and have proven to be effective leading into voting and then also after voting. And so those are the kinds of things I want to talk about. And so really, I guess the idea is to have a conversation about areas that I am most areas that fall specifically within my wheelhouse. So resistance in and of itself, if we're asking the question of how to fight back, that's a loaded question. And so I know we won't get to all those things tonight, but again, my idea, I guess, is to provide some educated and also evidence-based information that we might be able to think about, not just during this session, but even afterwards as it relates to all the things that should be taking place leading into the voting process, but also the things that need to be taking place or should be taking place in order to affect positive social change after a voting process.
And since we are in the voting, you brought us to the voting section of our discussion. Let ladies first. Go, Dr. Burrow.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So a couple of things. One, I am challenging us again to think about maybe have a paradigm shift, right? I think that it is given the environment and the atmosphere in which, or the political climate, really the socio-political climate in which we're dealing with, where we're watching people go to the polls and cast ballots that ultimately get rolled back in some way or another, or either we see reverses happening, right, despite the will of the people that have been expressed. I think it is important for us to, again, not just think about voting in and of itself as only as a singular tool, albeit important, but to also think about other things like, for example, ongoing capacity building, what it means to get to the voting process. Voting in and of itself, if we're thinking about this from a socio-historical perspective, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir, which is something else we can have a conversation about, there were a litany of actions taking place, whether we're thinking about the 15th Amendment, the passage of the 15th Amendment, giving Black men the right to vote in the US, or whether we're thinking about the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote in the US. And I want to be clear, that was about white women, not necessarily Black women and women of color. Whether we're thinking about the 1965 Voting Rights Act, folks didn't just magically show up at the polls, right? There was a groundswell of resistance that was happening that made the atmosphere conducive for all those different amendments to take place. And so I'm using that as space to think about, likewise might be true in the current, right? There has to be a groundswell that is taking place prior to this notion of just suggesting that people need to vote. People need to vote. People need to vote. Yes, we know that that matters, right? That we want people to register in record numbers, that we want people to express, their civic rights and so forth at the poll, but it's the groundswell, right? What are the actions and the dynamics that are playing out the same way? I just sort of laid out a few things historically, like there were, people were doing things, organizations were working. I'm not suggesting that that's not the case here. I'm just simply saying that what we might not want to do based on history is get into a position where we sort of roll out this idea that voting is the end all be all, because then that's misleading, right? And so there are things that needs to happen prior to that needs to happen 365 days a year based on history, not just ahead of one particular vote or just because of one particular candidate or because of one particular issue or because of one particular parish. We need to think about what might it mean to create a groundswell that compels people to register to vote, right? People who are very likely not to be on this Zoom meeting. That's the truth of the matter. The people who are less likely to go to the poll or register even are likely not in this Zoom meeting. So in some respect, we're preaching to the choir here, which is fine. But I'm challenging us to go further, right? And think about capacity building. And so capacity building that then means civic engagement, creating, tapping into, or advancing mobilization efforts and organizing that just simply involve voter shaming. Voter shaming does not work. So this idea of saying to people, which we've gotten in a habit, and we have these repeated narratives, right? With, well, people have died for your right to vote. How dare you, right? And so while that might be true on some level or another, that does not compel people who are feeling the most apathetic politically to go register. That's not a proven tactic. And so what we might want to think about that is a proven part of civic engagement and increasing that among people who are most are experiencing disenfranchisement, excuse me, in some of the most dire ways, is that door-to-door engagement. We know that foot action, right? Door-to-door engagement. Participants in many of my projects, resistance projects, talk about the idea of being pandered to, right? Talk about the idea of being talked at and talked over, but not necessarily talked with. Having these experiences of drive-by types of interactions where people are kind of in and out of the community, not necessarily there engaging them and engaging them about issues that matter to them, real-time issues. Like, for example, candidates that they can connect to. Maybe there are candidates here or there that they might feel some sense of connection to, but the idea that just wholly saying to people, you need to register to vote, and then also you need to just get to the poll. Well, then what happens when people get to the poll? If they have no education about the particular candidates or the issues in which they're going to the polls for. So getting them registered and getting them to the poll does not solidify the fact that there may be positive change if you don't know the issues and if you don't know the particulars. Now, I know that there are organizations and people working in that regard, but I'm just simply saying these are things to think about, right?
Yes,
Kitchen table issues that people can tap into and
exactly.
have conversations about, and a groundswell that happens not just as a one-off, but a groundswell that happens for people to feel compelled to the registration, compelled to the polls in
So,
ways
so,
that,
so
yeah.
thank you so much, Dr. Broad, because you already answered to some extent, how do we fight back? And it's not just going to the polls of voter shaming, as you just said. But I wanted to ask the entire panel, and everybody can weigh in on this. How is redistricting a problem for us in terms of electing candidates that we would like to elect? Can we get around that? Does anybody have any ideas? What about you, Attorney Snowden, Jack, Sweeney?
I see Jack has his
Lastly.
hands up, so I'm let him chime in.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had a something to contribute to that dovetailed off of what Dr. Boyle said, and that also I think answers your question, which I'm here in multiple capacities. I'm a DSA member, but I'm also one of the current field leads for Jamie Davis, our Senate candidate here in New Orleans. I'm one of the field leads for New Orleans. There are several others. And, obviously you can't redistrict a statewide seat. And here's some math for y'all. If we get 2019 governor runoff election level turnout in New Orleans, in Baton Rouge, and just 2% more white voters statewide voting Democrat, Jamie Davis wins that election. You want to know how to fight back? You want to know how to show Jeff Landry that New Orleans is special, that he can't just toss us around? We can be the difference maker in a statewide election that has a tangible impact, not just on Louisiana, but the whole country. And to go off of some of what Dr. Boyle said, we have to earn people's votes. I know to us it's obvious how we should vote, but it's not quite obvious to everybody. And you can't really blame them. That requires, like she said, knocking doors, calling people on the phone, texting your friends and family, talking to people who you don't normally talk to about these issues, and not just doing it once, but multiple times. I can say on the Davis campaign, we plan on knocking just about every door, even for low propensity voters, 3 times. And let me tell you, meeting people where they're at in the most literal sense is what gets them to feel like you care enough about them for them to care enough to go vote for you. So that I think answers both the question of how we have something sustainable that can make a difference, and two, how we can send a message that supersedes this this redistricting fiasco that we've been through. So thanks for the indulgence.
Yeah, so redistricting is, I heard D.L. Hughley talk to Don Lemon just last night, and he said, oh, the people in the South, if they just would go vote, if they just would go vote. And I'm like, okay, so if we just had some fairness in terms of redistricting, maybe we could go and vote and make some significant changes. So let me ask anybody else about the redistricting. How about you, Attorney Snowden? What are we going to do about that? We can't do anything about it. They've already taken our representation away from us, taking Cleo Fields' seat. That's one down.
Yeah, so I just want to remind people with the litigation of Louisiana versus Calais, obviously what was being challenged was the creation of a second majority Black district. And Supreme Court Justice Alito writes this opinion essentially saying that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act does not require Louisiana to create this second majority Black district. What is really, I think, the piece that sets us back even further with this decision is Justice Alito creates a framework that allows for racial gerrymandering to take place as long as it can be explained away as political gerrymandering. And I just want to give folks a little fun fact. So like the term gerrymander comes from this signatory of the Declaration of Independence called Elbridge Gerry. He was the governor in Massachusetts, and he drew these district lines in very weird ways, and he was criticized for drawing opposing parties' district that looked like a salamander. And so they combined the amphibian of a salamander. They combined like the image of a salamander with his last name. So that's where we get gerrymandering from. And Justice Alito says that political parties can draw district lines for the interest of preserving their power, essentially. And what is really problematic is he takes away this perspective of identifying disparate impact and requires proof of discriminatory intent. Well, what we know is that discrimination and racism in 2026 does not look the same as it looked like in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, right? And whenever we see a framework that is created to identify racism, what we see is a new tactic to skirt the lines of that definition. So what I think we need to do, obviously we understand the problems of the decision in Louisiana versus Calais as it relates to elimination of the second majority Black district. But from a strategic perspective, yes, we need to not only register people to vote, we need to make people a active voter. If any of you got the paper last week, you saw the numerous, about, I don't know how many people, with numerous pages of inactive voters who are essentially eligible from being purged from the rolls. And I believe the Secretary of State defines an inactive voter as somebody who hasn't participated in the last 2 federal elections, right? So there are a lot of people who are potentially subject to getting their names taken off of the voter rolls. And so, yes, register people to vote, but voter registrations are no good if people aren't actually voting. So let's think about what are our strategies as individuals who are civically engaged in this moment. Who are we bringing along with us to the polls? That's one thing. Or if we know people in our family who are registered to vote or aren't active voters, think about how we access the resources on the Secretary of State website to say, hey, you're actually listed as an inactive voter and might lose your power to vote. And then the third strategic thing that I want to just lift up is we have to do a better job of figuring out what narratives we need to control, whether it is a narrative about public safety, whether it is a narrative about civic engagement. What are the narratives that we want to control and consistently tend to? Because if we aren't mindful of the narratives that we want to articulate about New Orleans, we become easily defined or labeled by those who don't live here, right? So when we had the 2024 special crime session, right? The way that they painted New Orleans as a bloody mess, right? That wasn't wholly accurate or true. Or when we think about how we have an already downward trend that started before the pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic was a blip in terms of increase in crime, but we already had a downward trend in terms of our crime rate. And those were based off the successes of some bills that came through the Justice Reinvestment Task Force. Like, we need to do a better job of controlling our narratives. And so I just want to share that with all of us to think through what are the narratives that we want to control, but also what are the narratives that we need to be broadcasting.
Yeah, I want to add to what Randall and Will and Jack said. The other part is making sure those candidates who become elected do the job they're supposed to do, which means that doing the right thing. It means that doing things to make people's lives better, and not just be performative, and not just be all about the show and no substance. That's the other part, because when you go to people and you ask them, have you voted? For what? Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed, and it doesn't matter. And that's because the people we've elected in the past, or maybe even the present, you have to be that elected official to do the right thing and to do things to make people's lives better. It's that simple. So it comes from, those elected officials actually stepping up and doing what they were elected to do, and not just making promises, but also coming with plans, coming with programs to make people's lives better.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And let me add to that as well. That's one of the things as party chair that I have conveyed and stressed and almost coerced our political leaders, particularly our African American leaders, on not just promise but fulfillment. Delivering on the promise, letting people know what you've done for them, not just promising what you're going to do. And I'm asking them to go back to those towns and byways and highways once you're elected, not just in the political cycle, but once you're elected, go back and find out what are their special needs, how you can give them solutions, and what solutions you have given them. Because a lot of times we talk about voter apathy, but African American voters will vote. They will turn out. I've proven that as a former elected official, former state representative. But apathy is not the absence of interest; it's the absence of leadership. And if leaders don't go back and inform the voters on what they're doing for them, voters will lose interest. So we have to be able to deliver the needs to their doorsteps. What's going to make a difference in their life and their families? People have to have a reason to vote. It was mentioned about the historical aspect of the suffrage, of what was put forward to the efforts and the sacrifices that were put forward to give us the right to vote, which were huge, because the most horrible acts of violence were committed not against people protesting for more higher wages, not protesting against the environmental violations, not even protesting against war, but people protesting to have the right to exercise the right to vote. Because we do know that, but the millennials and the people of today, our young people need to know how is it going to impact them and how their vote can make a difference. And if we don't deliver that to them, if we don't convince them of that, they have a reason to vote and how it's going to make a difference in their lives, then we haven't done their job. That's a debate that we can't afford to lose.
Yeah, and Dr. Boyles is correct. Putting together a comprehensive plan to make sure we vote, why we vote, and then whoever we vote for, once they get in office, holding those people accountable to what they told you, why they want to become whatever position they wanted. That's what it's going to take.
Absolutely.
And if I could add, I want to say this. I don't think much has changed, to be frank. And I think sometimes when I say these kinds of things, people feel like maybe I'm being pessimistic, but I'm really and truly being realistic. I am reminded of theorist and author Audre Lorde, who says that you will never be able to dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. And so when we start talking about how, right, I think that sometimes we are romanticizing the idea that like, like we have this shock effect, right? Like these are things that just morphed and emerged just now, like just yesterday. No, I would argue that these are things that are deeply rooted in the foundation of this country. The system, again, we hear, cliche kinds of responses that, suggest, that, these things are brand new or somehow, or not working. The system is not working. I would argue as a critical theorist and looking at all these different changes historically that, yeah, the system is actually working as it was created to. And so, again, that means that we have to based on evidence, think outside of the box. And I have never seen revolutionary change happen, unfortunately, without bloodshed. Now, I said that, and it doesn't mean hop off this Zoom and go do something. Don't get out there and do some stuff and then say, Dr. Boyles encouraged. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying to you is that people have historically had to operate in ways that truly were counter the typical or outside of conventional means. That's what
Absolutely. But Dr. Brock, thank you so much for that. I wanted to, we had a couple of more topics, and I definitely want to have Jack Sweeney talk about the difference between DSA and Democratic Party. So
Yes, I prepared just the briefest of presentations, so I just sent a request to share my screen. Thank you for that. I will hold on, there we go. Okay. So conversations about DSA often start with the candidates we support. So I prepared a brief pop quiz. Who is DSA? Who isn't? So just briefly take a look. Hold on, I'm having some trouble presenting here, actually. Jeez. Sorry, y'all. So take a quick look at these progressive candidates and officials and consider to yourself which ones you think are DSA and which ones aren't. This one's probably one of the easiest. Representative Cortez, AOC, she is. Rashida Tlaib is. The four here, this is the squad that you may have heard of. Ayanna Pressley out of Massachusetts, member of the squad, not a member of DSA. Ilhan Omar, one of my personal favorite Congress folks, but not a member of DSA. Now, y'all probably know Mayor Zoran Mamdani. This is DSA's most significant electoral win. He is a member. I put former Maine Senate candidate Graham Plattner here because a lot of media reporting on him implied he was a member of DSA or outright said so. However, he is not a member of DSA, was not endorsed by DSA. Next up, former rep candidate and current candidate for Congress, Cori Bush, is a member. She's out of St. Louis. And now we've got Bernie Sanders, the man who made democratic socialism a thing in our political system. You may be surprised to know is not a member of DSA. We endorsed him, but he has never been a member. He's spoken at our conventions, but not a member. So just a fun little exercise to consider. So I prepared also this little Venn diagram of who's a Democrat, who's a Democratic Socialist, who's both, and who's also a DSA member. So these are Democrats, right? These are all people who I've heard both from non-DSA members and DSA members that is this person Democratic Socialist? Aren't they a DSA member? None of these people are. I support a lot of the people you see here, but none of them are DSA members. Next, we have Democratic Socialists who are not members of the Democratic Party or DSA. We have Bernie Sanders, previously mentioned, and MLK. You may have not known this, but MLK has spoken or had spoken extensively about democratic socialism towards the end of his life, but never officially joined a party, and DSA as an organization didn't exist at the time. This is, if y'all know who this is Bob Morrell. He was a candidate for District A here in New Orleans last year. He is a member of DSA, but he ran as no party. And then here in the middle, the overlap, we have AOC, who y'all know, and this colorful haired individual is Gabriela Biro, who is a DSA member who serves on our school board. She is a Democrat, a DSA member, and a Democratic Socialist. So I just wanted to do this to illustrate to folks how, not every progressive is a DSA member and not every Democratic Socialist is a DSA member, but there's significant overlap.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead. I'm not going to go through each and every one of these, but
go. And then I have a question for you. Go.
But I want to have these on the screen just because they're good guidelines, and maybe if folks have questions about individual aspects of this, I'm happy to answer them. But go ahead with your question.
The question is, why does the word socialist upset so many people?
Yeah, that's a great question. Frankly, the United States is a country that is deeply down to its core capitalist, right? Our powers that be are capitalist, and it's always been that way. Socialism threatens the hegemony of capitalism because capitalists believe that the economy should be should be run from strictly a have and have-nots system, right? If you have capital, you are entitled to use capital, to spend capital, to gain more capital. If you don't have any capital, you're kind of out of luck. Socialists believe that the economy should be, and this is very broad, there are many types of socialists. Socialists believe that the economy should be subject to democracy just as any other part of our lives. However, the United States is a very powerful country, and the powerful people in the United States are very powerful. And socialism is, frankly, a direct threat to their power and their wealth. So naturally, the powers that be in the United States have opposed socialism, not just for the last 10 years since Bernie Sanders became a thing, but, since the start of the Cold War and before then. The first Red Scare was before there was even a Soviet Union, and it was executed against American citizens, many of them recent immigrants who were deported after, if that sounds familiar to y'all. So there is a lot of baggage in this country with the word socialism, but I do assure you that socialists look like any other person. They act like any other person. They're as diverse as any other group. And their goal is an extension of democracy into the economy, because the economy determines, like what rules we live under, what privileges we're afforded. And they're ones that we can't really vote away under our current system. So the briefest definition of socialism, and the reason it's such a problem to the powers that be, is that it seeks to make our economy more democratic. I hope that answers your question fully.
Yes, so just for everybody, give us a little overview of these things to remember about DSA.
Yes. So like I said, there are DSA members out there, including elected officials, who are not Democrats, but most of us are. I'm a Democrat. I also serve on the Orleans Parish Democratic Committee. As I should have mentioned, I managed Pastor Manning's campaign. He was endorsed by OPDEC and the local chapter of the Democratic Socialists. Most DSA officials, like I said, are Democrats. That said, there are also socialists out there who aren't members of DSA, so you may encounter other socialist organizations out there, and they're different from DSA. Examples include PSL, FRSO, other alphabet soups. There are sometimes you'll see in the news a candidate characterized as DSA, but they might not be. Graham Plattner's an example. Abdul El Sayed in Michigan, while I think he's a great candidate, he's not a DSA member and not a socialist. The D in DSA stands for Democratic with a little d, not a big D. So Democratic, that is to say, not every DSA member is a Democrat, but the way DSA operates is democratic. I include this because it's very important. DSA is entirely member funded. So we don't get grants. We don't get major, contributions from, PACs or anything like that. I pay dues according to my income, very similar to a union. And DSA isn't a party, but admittedly it acts like a party. And then so go ahead. I know I'm taking time. So the last two, democratic socialism, a lot of isms people tend to believe have a very strict list of beliefs and principles. For DSA purposes, democratic socialism isn't a specific list. It's more of how we operate as an organization, which is to say we are socialists who make our decisions democratically. And then finally, both the Democratic Party and DSA are big tent organizations. So you have a lot of people with a lot of different beliefs under the umbrella. But those big tents, while they overlap significantly, they don't overlap 100%. So I just thought it was important to lay out some of these things because they're, DSA is new to a lot of people, and I want to be sure everyone's on the same page before we get into the meat of the discussion.
Thank you so much. And then I wanted to ask Valerie about the recall. You wanted to talk about the recall petition? Valerie, leave us?
Yes, hello. Okay, the recall, I'm gonna put the information. The recall is still going on, and I'm gonna put the information in the chat for everyone who want to know about the recall, specifically about the recall. We do have different sites that's going on right here in New Orleans, and they do have a website that you need to check every day to see who is open and what time they are open. So the recall is still going on. So, but Miss CC, I want the attorney Snowden or the judges to explain about the recall, because we just gonna put some information about the recall in the chat for anybody who want to talk about it. But like the laws and how it came about and why we can do the recall, holding the I want to say the politicians, the governor, any I'm gonna say legislative official accountable of their action towards the constituents, like towards the voter or toward the citizen, that we have a right to recall them. So can anyone explain that to the audience in legal terms, please? Because I am not no attorney.
From a legal perspective, I don't know what much people need to know. When we think about recalling, right, it is a form of accountability. And just as somebody who is running for office needs to get a certain amount of votes to earn that position, there's an accountability mechanism that if the will of the people in that jurisdiction, here we're talking about 2 statewide elections, if they believe that those elected individuals are not doing the job that they were elected to do, the recall petition is a way in which signatures of voters in the state can say, hey, we don't want this person in office anymore, or to put that question, for consideration for more people. There's more to it than that. I haven't researched it from a legal perspective. Other folks on the call probably know more, but I just want folks to remember and kind of couch the effort of a recall as an accountability tool for elected officials.
Thank you so much. Valerie, do you want to open up the floor for questions from the chat, people in the chat, or wherever they are? They may have questions. Yeah,
we can. I will go open up at 6 o'clock, but do any other panelists want to close out with something before we open up the chat for the questions?
Yeah, Valerie, this is Gaines. Let me briefly add to. I think the threshold, the total number of votes signatures you're going to need is 509,000, around that amount. And for the strategic value for this recall has been very important for state Democrats, particularly for the party in terms of our strategic agenda to turn this state back blue, turn this state around, redirect the misdirection of this state, is that it's generated a lot of excitement among our voters. It's showing that we respond in Louisiana's ground zero for threats against voting rights of African Americans and a threat against our democracy for all people. We represent all citizens of the state. So it's a response. It's a direct response. It's an immediate response, and it's a strong response. And it sends the impression that we are putting up the fight and we're fighting back. And more importantly, it's showing that it's important for the voters themselves to lead this effort. The party was contacted about the party supporting this effort, about participating and being directly involved. And we said, well, no, we want to come from people like you, Valerie, the voters, because it needs to show the voters are dissatisfied with this governor. He's doing a horrible job. He's a power predator. And it's important to show that. So we're glad that it's a groundswell of support that's being generated because of this, and it's going to weaken the governor for the next gubernatorial election. So that's what we're looking forward to. It has many purposes, and we're glad to see this moving forward.
Just wanted to ask Mr. Gaines one thing. Where is the National Democratic Party, and why are they putting money in our candidates? I feel like the South has just been overlooked. And also, what is the LLBC doing?
Yeah, that's changing. Actually, you're right. That was the situation up until we had a new direction in the party, a new leadership. They really didn't put much into the South. They realize now. The DNC, that's why we hosted the national DNC meeting here in April, not only the national DNC, but the national chairs meeting in April, because they are putting interest in Louisiana. They realize the future of the party, the future of the Democratic Party nationally runs through the South. Cory Booker contacted me about 3 weeks ago. I hosted 2 events for him here in New Orleans because he wants to play in New Orleans in Louisiana. He wants to help. Gavin Newsom contacted us, contacted me by phone. Buttigieg. So all these individuals realize that Louisiana plays a key role in the South and the future of this party and the growth of this party and the direction of this party. So no, they are now putting money into Louisiana. I can't speak for Jimmy Harris's campaign because he controls his party, his staff controls his campaign funding and the sources, but they are putting money into the party to help our candidates, and I think that's going to increase as we go forward.
Valerie, back to you.
Okay, first question that came up was by Jackie. Jackie asked a question: is there a time limit a person can be held in prison before their case is heard?
There is. So there's a couple of like legal protection. So let's say somebody is, just arrested. They have to be brought in front of a judge essentially within 48 hours for there to be a bond hearing. In the event that somebody's case has been accepted and they're going to trial, their defense attorney can file what's called a speedy trial motion, which creates a time clock essentially with which they actually have to be brought to trial. If they're not brought to trial within that time period, then they can't be held incarcerated. They can't be held in jail if their speedy trial motion, if the time for the speedy trial motion has ran. So it's a mechanism with which people can be released from jail in the event that the trial doesn't happen within that time period.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
and-
I'm sorry. Can
and
I
it's-
just say one thing, Val?
Yeah, I just gonna let you
And-
know that Judge Fuller came in. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
okay, good, Judge Fuller, and I see others. But then here's a question for everybody, but especially the judges. How can we tolerate? What are we going to do? Because the state has thrown our votes away when we voted for Mr. Duncan and other people and the judges. They've just thrown our votes away. Is that legal? Somebody tell me.
This is Judge Levine. I'm out in the field today, but I'm definitely listening in. I just wanted to tout Judge Fuller, who has filed the litigation to challenge the legality of our seats being eliminated by the governor. And it's Judge Fuller and Judge Levine, myself, and Judge Rhonda Good, whose seats have been eliminated. And honestly, in my opinion, it's all about the governor trying to turn us against each other when we have so much work to do here in New Orleans to be able to promote the best sports we can. So I just wanted to put that out there. We're still waiting a decision on the lawsuit against the judicial elimination bill.
Okay, thank you. I think
If
Copeland
Judge
asked
Fuller,
the question.
if Judge
Michonne.
Fuller, if Judge Fuller is here, can we hear from him? Because I believe he's the person who, or one of the people who filed that suit.
I was trying to wait to ask any other panelists can answer Miss CC question.
Mhm. In terms of losing our vote, so if that happens here, that can happen anywhere. So is that going to be allowed? People just throw our votes away, and for the judges and everybody else?
So I think what happens is they hide behind the term legislation to do what you describe, and I know most of us are probably aware that what's happening here has happened in other states recently. I guess the most glaring example being Mississippi, where there were additional judges added to Hinds County, Mississippi, and I don't remember if it was a legislative act or the governor just on his own asked that the Capitol Police patrol the entire city of Jackson, which obviously, the more people are policed, the more likely arrests are to occur, which is something very similar to the state troopers being dispatched to New Orleans, even with crime at a all-time low. especially, we're talking about our recent history. It hasn't been this low since I've been here, and I've been here almost 30 years. So it's a trend across the South. There was a similar effort in Georgia by the state legislature there to take over the airport from the city of Atlanta. And we know that's one of the busiest and most successful airports in the country. But there was literally an effort by the government in Georgia, Republican-led government, to take over Atlanta's airport from the city of Atlanta. So it appears that there are efforts, at least throughout the South, in certain states, to kind of wrestle control of certain cities from the people who have been elected to run those cities. And I think we may be seeing something similar to that here. In terms of stopping it, unfortunately, there are, I'm going to use the term loopholes in the law that allows certain decisions to be made to quote unquote justify those decisions. But in effect, it feels like what you said. It feels like elections are taking place, decisions are being made, and then legislation is being passed, which essentially reverses what happened during those elections. So it's just something to be mindful of. It's something to pay attention to, because it's not limited. I promise you, it's not limited to Louisiana at all. So it's just something to keep an eye on.
Judge Fuller, tell us about the lawsuit that you just filed.
Yeah, so my lawsuit was based on the fact that the Constitution requires 2/3 vote in both houses to eliminate district judges. And obviously, the criminal district court is comprised of district judges. It should be successful, right? Because we're talking about what's in black and white. So it should be successful. But in this particular era that we live in, locally, statewide, and nationally, unfortunately, we don't always have confidence in the outcome, even when things are in black and white. So we'll wait to see what happens. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I think we'll hear something from the Supreme Court probably by Friday, if not earlier.
Okay, thank you. We had Betty. Betty, you still want to ask your question?
Yes, and this is kind of directed to Randal Gaines, I think, as the Democratic Party. I have voted Democrat probably my entire life. I'm in my 70s now. And things are so much worse for people that don't have what I have and are not the same color as I am. And I'm wondering how in the world we get people elected when most of our Democrats that have been elected in this state and city receive money from the corporate world, people who are causing the problems to begin with. And so how do we get ourselves out of this mess that we are in? I am very much a Democrat socialist. I finally signed up to be one recently because I'm sick of what's happening with the Democratic Party. I'm sick of James Carville calling them communist. And what is the Democratic Party in Louisiana going to do so that people have housing, have food? We're not building more prisons, and we are having we've got a corporate public school system in the city. What are we going to do?
I appreciate that. That's a very profound question. And, the first thing is that we have to make, as Judge Hunter mentioned, our current elected officials who are representing the Democratic interests accountable, making them more accountable, make sure that they're delivering on the promise and turning promise into fulfillment. The next thing is we have to elect more Democrats to the state legislature. When I was there, we were able to fight back the supermajority of the Republicans and they gained a supermajority 2 years ago, which is dangerous because the guardrails are off. They can basically pass whatever they want. We have a hostile rogue governing office who's vetoed in this last session vetoed most of the capital outlay requests from Democrats. So yeah, we have to elect more Democrats to make better decisions so that we can deliver the things that you care about, Betty, and the things that the people that we serve care about, the things that really make a difference in their lives, to take care of the needs of our people, as opposed to these capitalistic, self-serving agendas that unfortunately, some of our even our elected officials seem to pursue. So we have to change that. We have to make them real and take care of real problems, and give real solutions. We're working very hard on that. We're trying to change the paradigm, change the dynamic to adapt to exactly the things that you were talking about. But it's it's a cultural change. It's going to take a while. It's not going to be immediate, but we're making the first steps in that direction, I assure you.
Okay.
If I can add,
Thank you. I'm sorry. You can go ahead, Dr. Boyles.
Yeah, I'll just circle back and say that as we're thinking about, and having these conversations about what can take place, I would challenge us to think about what that really means, like very specifically at the ground level. Because otherwise we will sit in Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting and gathering after gathering, and we'll talk about maybe addressing having more Democrat candidates and things like that. But what does that mean? How does that translate? How are we translating that specifically to people who are not engaged to register? See, that's the thing. What does that mean in real time, right? On the ground. And that's the thing I'm trying to challenge us and say that, maybe we can have a conversation then about, again, capacity building, which then also mean grooming candidates. That's been a deal, getting people engaged, not just simply to register to vote, but also thinking about running, and those kinds of things. So again, I'll stop there, but yeah, just how do we translate and how are we articulating this at the ground level for the people who are really going to ultimately register and get to the polls?
And let me make a quick response, because I know we have to move on. Yeah, what you're talking about, a tangible, no, we're in a crisis and we have to do things differently if we're going to overcome this crisis. So you're talking about making a tangible difference that people can relate to and people can feel, see, and touch, and as opposed to rhetoric, as opposed to dialogue. And I totally agree. That's the only thing that's going to get our people out to vote. The Democrats out voted the Republicans, which is a rare occurrence, maybe even unprecedented, on the May 16 elections, because Democrats are now fired up. So, but now we have to match deliverance with their participation, and that's the plan.
And I'd like to add very, very quickly, because Ms. Betty, I really appreciate your question. It was great to see you at your first DSA meeting over the weekend. The only thing that can beat organized money is organized people. And a lot of people have brought up, strategic plans and so on. And that's absolutely what we need to do. We need to be thinking this year, we need to be thinking of 2027, our statewide elections. Beyond that, we need to be thinking about 2028 and then 2029. Within DSA, we've started a process of, recruiting candidates, training candidates, and beyond that, training people to actually, knock doors and talk to voters. And both within DSA and beyond DSA, there are some exciting campaigns going on right now that are winnable, that will help train people on the skills they need to beat organized money. The Jamie Davis campaign, which I'm working on, we are training an unprecedented number of people to try to get the turnout we need to change the math in this state. And I've seen polling recently. I can't share that polling with you. It looks really good. Lauren Jewett's here. She's a member of DSA. We're in the process of voting on the question of her endorsement. She's challenging Steve Scalise from a standpoint of organized people versus organized money, a grassroots candidate. So there's some really strong Democratic candidates who have rejected, corporate money, who have created broad coalitions one of them here today. Really grateful for that. And they're doing all kinds of trainings right now that are useful not just for this campaign ahead of November, but that will those skills will apply to, any election in the future. So if you want to know how to get enough organized people to beat organized money, the time to start is now. And there are many, many, many places to plug in, and I'd be happy to provide those to folks.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, we're going to hit 2 questions at a time. And I'm looking at our time, and we have quite a few questions. So I'm so sorry. So I'm apologizing early. So we might not get to all our questions, but we will have your questions on record. And if you have a direct question to a direct panelist, we will send that question to that panelist, and maybe they will contact you and answer that question. So these 2 questions, one by dialing, okay, but the numbers remain the same, even with the redistricting. If we vote in droves, then where overwhelmed the redistricting, is that right? That's the first question. The second question is juries. How can the AG and the governor attack the jury panel, such as the grand jury, in the case of a local New Orleans against the AG? So I want to say that question is directed at Attorney Will, and anyone can answer the redistricting question.
Yeah, I can let me touch real quickly and I'll give everyone else a chance on that redistricting question. They're absolutely right. Voting is the most powerful element of change. There are other components of empowerment, but the laws are generated by the political arena. That's where the battle is. That's where our power is. That's where our protection is. That's our last line of defense. If the opposing forces or the oppressing forces have political control, they can pass laws that are limited laws that take away your protection. They can basically do anything they want to you. So, or take anything that you need from you. So yeah, it's about who can get their votes out. We've won before. In 2019, when John Bel was the governor running for re-election as the only Democratic governor in the Deep South, we were able to defeat the Trump endorsed candidates. I know that personally because I led the statewide charge to turn out the vote. We defeated the Trump endorsed candidate. It was on CNN, MSNBC. We were able to do that because we turned out the vote. And you know what? New Orleans was the main factor in that win. The voters in New Orleans turned out in droves, and we were able to defeat Donald Trump's endorsed candidate, despite the fact that he came down 3 times to Louisiana and begged for that win and turned out 100,000 more Republican votes, and we still defeated them because the grassroots effort turned out the vote. So yeah, we can overcome the redistricting. Another aspect of redistricting is if Congress can pass the Voting Rights Act, then that's going to really give us an opportunity to turn back the clock, to reverse the harm that's being done by some of these redistricting and basically make those corrections based on the new laws that will be enacted because of the Voting Rights Act. But anyway, I do think you're quite accurate with that. But thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime on the redistricting before Mr. Will come in and answer about the jury? Nobody else? Okay, Attorney Will?
Would you mind just restating the jury question? I didn't catch all of it.
Okay. Oh man, okay, I'm trying to find. Okay, I'm gonna paraphrase it. It was a question about how can the jury panel be attacked for doing a jury duty, such as example the grand jury that was on play for the AG and the city of New Orleans.
Thanks. So thankfully, there are a lot of good protections as it relates to the secrecy and confidentiality of grand jury proceedings. I know the governor indicated that he wanted to launch an investigation into the grand jurors. I think the attorney general or the governor described the grand jury as a kangaroo grand jury. And I first just want to say, what a poor example of leadership for elected officials to describe everyday New Orleanians who took time out of their schedule to serve over a 6-month period on the grand jury. That type of disrespect should not be tolerated for everyday citizens who are, doing their job in terms of deciding whether or not a person should be indicted for a crime. There's, juries, jurors generally cannot be punished for their decisions. So like when a jury votes guilty or a jury votes not guilty, like there's nothing that, they can't be charged with a crime for doing the decisions they thought was right at the time. In the event that something is revealed that a juror was unduly influenced or coerced in a particular way to bring these charges, like the focus, I think, will more likely be on the individual who attempted to coerce or unduly influence a grand juror, as opposed to repercussions happening against that grand juror. I also just want to remind people that one grand juror cannot indict somebody, right? They can certainly say, hey, I have information that a crime may have been committed. We need to investigate it. That's what our criminal procedure allows. Then from there, that individual grand juror who might have a suspicion that a crime was committed has to convince 8 other grand jurors to vote for an indictment. And what we know, we don't know the threshold, but we know that after their investigation, an indictment was secured by the grand jury. So I think that the grand jurors themselves, won't have repercussions because they, as far as we know, were executing their responsibilities as they were charged. Now, as it relates to people who may have tried to influence the grand jury, I actually don't think that happened. I think we had a 2-week period where there was a lot of media coverage about the letters that the Attorney General sent to a host of New Orleans leaders. And some of the language that was being used at the time was, hey, the AG is not going to intimidate us. The AG is not going to threaten us. And if you are just a grand juror and you're watching the news and you hear that, you might, from your layperson perspective, think, is this an appropriate use of the Attorney General's power? So from, attacking the individuals on the grand jury, I don't think we're going to see that. I think the investigation is more going to try to ascertain whether or not somebody unduly influenced those grand jurors, and I just don't suspect that actually took place.
Thank you. Now we have a question by Judge Kevin Johnson. Will there be next steps? Can you explain that question, please, Judge?
Are we going to start not just talking about the plan for November in terms of election, but the steps we're going to do? I heard some in terms of door knocking, and that's a great thing. But in terms of motivating voters, there's kinds of steps we can take. And some of those steps would include, obviously, the people who see those voters regularly. Some of those people are like ministers. I don't see one on this Zoom piece. But ministers, of course, see them every day. So we encourage that population of people, ministers around Louisiana, to start driving this message every Sunday. Every Sunday. Can we do that? Can we get the Divine Nine, that group of people, to become as engaged in this process as possible to carry the same message across all the populations they touch? Can we look across every other entity similarly structured and situated to start doing the same? Recognizing, and I agree completely, that we can win in November. We can. But the only way we can is if all of those pieces, parts, start holding on to that rope and start pulling on it.
Okay, we have like 7 minutes. We only have like time for one question. So David, don't jump on me, but Nor-52 had you first. So we on Nor, you're gonna be the last question. Then we're gonna ask for closing remarks from our panelists.
Yes, I'm going to lower my hand. All right. Yeah, I really want to appreciate Justice and Beyond for putting on this forum. This is a very serious and necessary conversation that we're having. And but my question is that I guess Judge Calvin just alerted to it. I feel strongly that here in Louisiana that we're going to have to do something that is going to investigate how the votes or voter registration and the votes are counted here. So could somebody say something about that? I know we had, I I think it was Gwen Greenup that was running for the Secretary of State, and that she was going to implement some transitioning on how the votes are registered and counted here in the state of Louisiana. So can somebody say something about that? Because I really feel that we're not getting due diligence or justice in regards to how our votes are being counted. I think there's some type of compromise or manipulation, or could even be some type of fraud taking place.
Well, let me this is Gaines. Let me briefly address that. Yes, the party is actually working directly with the DNC out of Washington on the voter protection issue that you're referring to, because I can assure you that every subversive act that comes to the imagination in November is going to be taken by the Republican Party and Donald Trump, and we're preparing for the worst case scenario. We're talking about a president who tried to steal an election when he was no longer legal in office. So you know what's going to happen while he's the president. So this is a issue of last resort for them. I think the Democrats want to take back Congress, but Donald Trump knows that if we take back the Senate and Congress, then he's going to wear an orange suit for quite a while. So yeah, I think they're going to put out all stops. So yeah, we're going to make sure that every law that's available is going to be applied to protecting our voters and protecting the votes that are cast.
Okay, now we're going to ask for the closing remarks from our panelists. And of course, we're going to start with the lovely first, Dr. Andrea Boyles.
Well, excuse me, please.
Okay.
May I just interject one thing? I'll be very
Yes.
short. Can Justice and Beyond hold a part 2 of this session? Because there are a lot of people in the chat who've had some great ideas, and this is not something that, and maybe the next thing will be, this is what we're going to do to fight back. Maybe concrete ideas, just like have been proposed by Judge Johnson, and I think Jackie Harris had a good idea. So can we do that? Think about that.
Yes, we can. Yeah, I will bring that. We got the pillars on here now. We can talk about
I agree. I concur.
Thank you for that, Miss CC.
I was going to suggest it when we met later. So thank you.
Thank you. So anything else? I got to give our props and everybody. I want to thank our moderator, our guest moderator, Miss CC Campbell-Rock is an investigator journalist, and y'all need to look her up. She has some articles that I looked at myself. You can look it up on Google, and she has some articles on voting, some information, some education pieces, some strong words that we can chew on. Thank you, Miss Campbell-Rock. Thank you.
Very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. So we're gonna ask Dr. Ball, the next Mr. Jack, start closing us out. Then we're gonna start going down the road. We got 2 minutes, y'all.
Yes, real quick, I'll just say thanks again for having me on. I want to say that I plugged in a comment also contextualizing a statement I made earlier about revolutionary acts that I've seen and that we all are aware of historically, just to add some context or at least some precedence for what kinds of things, when I said bloodshed, like thinking about Bloody Sunday and things like that. So I just wanted to clarify that I'm not encouraging it. I'm just simply saying that people have done acts outside of the box that we can defer to in terms of thinking about how to reach the community and how to also provoke change in this 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Well, as a proud democratic socialist, I can't disagree that we could all use a little bit more revolutionary energy. I just sent in the chat a few links to upcoming New Orleans DSA events, a link to join DSA if you're interested in it, as well as my phone number. I love talking to people about anything and everything. So if you want to talk about DSA or anything else I brought up, please do reach out. I have mentioned a few times my role with the Jamie Davis campaign. I should totally clarify that my DSA capacity and my Jamie Davis capacity are separate. very proud to be supporting Jamie. I will say I don't think he described himself as a democratic socialist, but that's all right. You know, he's the candidate to win. So I want to thank y'all for your time. This is Justice and Beyond is a really spectacular group, and it was a huge honor to be asked to participate and to share this panel with the illustrious fellow panelists. Just hope that if I've shared anything with y'all, I hope you realize that democratic socialism is not quite anything to be scared of. And y'all,
Please
hold on.
mute. Who's it?
And
Please mute.
the last thing I'll say is, you may not be a democratic socialist, but to the Republicans, we're all socialists. So don't be too scared of being called a socialist because, they paint us all with the same brush and we're all in the same boat. And especially in Louisiana, we're in this together. And, we at New Orleans DSA are here to fight for and defend New Orleans, same as y'all. And, especially going into 2026 and 2028. Let's all sing with one voice, one band, one sound. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Now we have Mr. Randal.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate this organization's work, your efforts, your vision for the future. You guys are fulfilling the need that we have, not only in New Orleans area, but across the state. So we appreciate all the efforts you're putting forward to bringing all of us together, because all we have is unity, strategy, and our vote. Look, we need all hands on deck. State-based organizations, advocacy organizations, parish committees, veteran organizations, fraternities, and sororities. We need everybody to push this agenda forward to protect the right to vote and to make sure that we get the right people elected. We have to vote aggressively. Well, first, register people to vote aggressively, and educate our voters aggressively. So the last thing I'll say is, you got the power, so let's use it.
Thank you. Yes, we do. Next, we have attorney William Snowden. Then next we have Judge Hunter. Then next we have Judge Fuller. We're going to ask Judge Fuller to close us out. Attorney Will Snowden. Is he on? He's not on. We're going to move on to Judge Hunter.
Look, one thing, Jack, they accuse Franklin Delano Roosevelt as being a socialist as well. So it goes back a long way. But look, we've got to convince people, how do we make their lives better, and come up with a message. How do we reduce insurance costs? How do we make sure our children are reading and writing at grade level? What are we doing for not just economic development, but economic opportunity? And what are we actually doing to make people safe? If we can't have a message for people and how we improve their everyday lives, then what we've talked about today and then what we want to talk about in part 2 would be for naught. We've got to have candidates and we've got to have a platform where how can we change people's everyday lives and make those lives better.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Hunter. Next, we have Judge Fuller.
Yeah, I just want to thank you all for inviting me, given me the opportunity to come on. And whenever I'm in a group of concerned citizens, it always reaffirms to me that I'm not alone in my thought processes about what can make us better locally, statewide, and nationally. So I just want to applaud everyone who is like-minded in their thought process. And I would just say that the first step requires courage. And I think all of us who are on this particular call have the courage and we have the thoughts. So I think the future is kind of in our hands, if you will. And if we push forward, I think certainly that better days are ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. We started out with Miss CC. We're going to end with Miss CC. Miss CC?
Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed hearing everybody's position. I will take that to me because, I'm writing for the Louisiana Weekly as well as Think504.com. I have my pieces about voting on Think504.com, so I'd ask everybody to look at that. But again, I think just as we agreed, there needs to be a part 2, part 3. We just need to do this all the way up to the midterm and let's bring concrete examples in terms of where you can go, what we need to do. Here's the plan in terms of voter turnout. So thank you all. Thank the panelists because they brought some very interesting and smart things we needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Please forgive me. I have been having my video off because something is wrong with my internet. So I had a stronger internet with my video off. And please, I do apologize to all the candidates who running for a position, because usually time we ask for the candidates to announce themselves. But as you see, we're at 6:35 and our time is per spats. Our time is 6:30. So please forgive Just Beyond for holding you over the time. So with this said and done, we're going to leave you all with peace, harmony, and joy. Stand up, speak up, and show up for the fight, because the fight is real. Justice shall ring, and shall ring a bell. Loud
And we're
clear.
going to keep some love in there too, Valerie.
Good. Yes.
Much
good night,
love.
y'all. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Call me, Jack. I put my number in the chat.
I
Belinda
will.
Parker Brown.
I'll call you in about 10 minutes.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.